to go ahead and get started. I think there's one or two more people that need to pop in. But just while we're introing people, in case anyone didn't hear as you were coming in, the red is absolutely delicious as it is chilled a tad bit. So if you want to throw that red in the fridge, it will be nice and perfectly chilled by the time we actually get to start tasting it. So optional, I have mine at room temp, but I have the bottle in my fridge, so I'll retaste it and I'll be able to compare it room temp and chilled. And Allison said it's pretty amazing when it's a little slightly chilled, which is yeah, so it's still warm for us Californians here, but if you're not wanting to drink a chilled red when you're in Colorado or some of the chillier places, we totally understand, and it's pretty good room temp as well. But so hello everyone, my name is Gina Boucher. I am one of the co-founders of Riviera Wine Group, and this is the second collaborative tasting between Allison, she's over here on my screen, I'm pointing over here. She owns Please The Palate, and Mike over here on my screen, he owns Wine Weirdos. And I just want to tell you a little bit more about them. So Allison is like a mastermind and she's amazing. She owns Please The Palate, which is a boutique agency specializing in marketing and event planning for the wine and spirits industry. She is a columnist for the Napa Valley Register. She's a regular contributor to the California Winery Advisor and the Beverage Industry News. She has also appeared in a variety of publications, including the Wine Industry Advisor, Thrillist, LA Weekly, and more. She is the host of a podcast called Wine Soundtrack USA, where she interviews winemakers and different people in the wine industry. And then she is connected to Mike because she also partakes in the 1-minute videos that are posted on YouTube and other social media for the Wine Weirdos videos. And I think I covered everything for Allison, but Mike, I
have one new thing, Gina.
Oh, do tell.
I do a weekly wine video on YouTube called Crush on This with two other wine writers, one in Chicago, one in Vancouver, where we pick a theme and then we bring a different bottle to the table to talk about. So it's called Crush on This.
So is that's a video series? It's not a podcast?
No, video series.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I've actually started to see some of those pop up on social media. So in that extra sheet, just so everyone knows, if you're curious about where to find any of us, I have websites and social media links as well, so you can start to follow, and then you'll get all of our interesting stuff that's going on. But to transition over to Mike, when did you start Wine Weirdos? Is it going on 10 years?
Yeah, 2010 is when we first started thinking it up, but got more serious about it as it went along, and yeah, it's been fun. It's now we're kind of overwhelmed with samples, so trying to sort that out with Allison earlier today. Actually tasted a terrific Pinot Noir from Pioneer and Spears Vineyard, I think, in Santa Rita Hills. I don't know who made it, but man, it was.
They're referencing the very first wine that I have ever bottled. So that is, if you follow Wine Weirdos, you'll be seeing their review of the Pinot Noir that I bottled from Santa Rita Hills, the Spear Vineyard, which is.
It was unfortunate.
It's so gross. God, I don't even know why I made it. I didn't make it. Kat Gaffney, who's a fantastic winemaker, did. It is actually delicious. I'm extremely honored to have it. Yeah. So I got connected with Mike. I've been working in the Santa Barbara wine industry now for the last 7 years. And actually, happy silver lining of COVID. I have actually recently quit my full-time job and now work 100% for Riviera Wine Group. So that's been a really exciting opportunity for me. But literally like weeks before I left my previous job in the wine industry, I met Mike as he was coming up to Los Olivos in Santa Barbara wine country to grab some samples and do a tasting at the winery that I was working at. And from that meeting stemmed these awesome, cool tastings. We started off with our weird wine tasting, which we did about a month and a half ago. And now this great series that we've started and hope to continue called Rethinking European Wines. So we intentionally chose a slightly more affordable wine than we normally do, just because we wanted to offer you a very easy, accessible wine tasting of some wines that you might not necessarily think of when you think of Italy or Portugal or Austria, which are the three countries that we're focusing on in this series. A couple of you are just partaking in Italy, and that's totally fine. But if you're really excited and you still wanted to partake in the next two, those are still available to purchase, and I can ship those to you as well. But let's see, did I cover everything? Allison, Mike, anything to add before we actually start tasting?
No, but if you guys have questions along the way, feel free to jump in and ask, but we'll try to be as interestingly comprehensive as we can be.
Which winery were you at in Los Olivos?
I managed two. So I was at Soul Miner for just about a year, and then Zinke Wine Company for just over a year.
That is my favorite winery right now.
Which one?
love
Oh, nice.
We just like come, every other week. We have Zinke and
I love it. Yeah, their wines are so awesome. Michael Zinke, the winemaker, he has a huge palate. So I'm a little bit on the lighter end, but the Gruner that he made last year totally blew my socks off. I could drink the rosé like water. And then some of his reserves are just gorgeous as well. So it was really cool. That was my first tasting room that I actually worked specifically with Rhone varieties, Allison. And so it was really cool to kind of dig in deeper into some of the vineyards in Ballard Canyon and that area as well. So my specialty for Riviera Wine Group is definitely California wines. So I am definitely out of my depth with these European wines, but it has, in my research for this series, my European fire has been stoked officially, and I am quickly becoming a European wine fanatic. So I'm really excited to be able to share these with you guys. And then just one last final note. Please, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to interrupt us. You can throw some stuff in the chat. I'll be monitoring that. But then if you want to just literally interrupt us mid-sentence, that's just fine. But we will also have a question and answer. We'll have time at the end if you want to save your question, or if you think of something at the end. We always encourage questions. I have a million questions about these wines for Allison and Mike as well, because like I said, my specialty is California wine. So with that being said, I'll let Allison start. We're obviously going to start with the white wines. So if you don't have any wine in your glass yet, please go ahead and pour yourself some. And Allison, please tell us about Italy.
Yeah, so I thought I'd start with just a really quick overview. We all are probably familiar with certain wines or regions in Italy, some more than others. Italy produces wine in every single region, and it's home to some of the oldest wine producing regions in the world. They have some of the fifth, I think, in wine consumption, and there are 20 wine regions that correspond to it. So I wrote down a list here just to run through it. We have Aosta Valley, Piemonte, Liguria, Lombardia, Trentino Alto Adige / Südtirol, which is the German word for Alto Adige, Friuli, Venezia Giulia, Veneto, Emilia Romagna, Toscana, Marche, Umbria, Lazio, Sardinia, Abruzzo, Molise, Campania, Basilicata, Puglia, Calabria, and Sicily. So a lot of regions and a lot of wine, and to make it really, really, really hard, there are like 1,000 grapes, literally 1,000 grapes in Italy. They have identified something like 400 or more grapes right now, and they have another 500 on the pipeline. They are identifying, they're finding their DNA, their origin, whether they came.
Sorry, connection is a little mumbly. So
sorry.
It's okay if you can shift to a better location, just because it's a little distracting, but if not, then carry on.
Sometimes my speaker does that. Is that a little better?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. So, not to be redundant, they, with the 500 some odd grapes that they have identified, another 500 that they are working on, they're tracing their DNA, the relationships. You've got grapes that might have similar names. Still okay?
Sort of.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This hasn't happened, but
The more
there are a lot of grapes.
the more you pull back from the mic, the better it'll be. So just kind of lean back more. I think when you get close to the mic, it just,
Trying.
sorry.
So with so many grapes, it's hard to keep up. We all know Sangiovese. We all have heard of Pinot Grigio, of Nebbiolo and Barbera, but there are so many other wonderful grapes to explore, and that's what we're trying to do with this series. So we're journeying to two separate regions in polar opposite areas of Italy. We're going to go to the very north in Alto Adige for our white wine. We're going to go to the very south to Calabria for our red wine, to give you two completely different terroirs and situations. So Alto Adige is in the very north. It's Italy's kind of top white wine region. They are 38% wine production, and the rest of it is white wine. So if you're looking for white wines from Italy, this is a good place to start. They're located in the Alps. So what's really interesting is the Alps, you think of this cold weather out there, they are on the border of Austria. Every sign is in Italian and Austrian or German when you're in Alto Adige. But it's actually not only one of the smallest growing regions, that it also is actually warmer wine region than you would expect, because the Alps protects all the cold air there. They protect any of the cold coming over the Alps. And so the valley tends to get warmer for a very nice long growing season. And a lot warmer, sometimes even to rival Sicily down to the south. So let's see, what can I say? They have a diversity of terroirs, meaning tons of different soils, a lot of different grapes. But another really, really interesting thing about this region is that, have you all heard of the DOC system? Is it really bad? Because I can log off and come back in.
I think just when you're farther back from your, like, when, I know you're excited, but when you're closer, it's a little grainy.
Yeah, I think
one
the
of the
softer
things-
you speak, the better it'll.
Okay.
I was going to say, sometimes when you turn off while you're talking, I know it'd be weird. A lot of times if you turn off your camera, then it comes crystal clear through. But I know it's better to see. Yeah, now try it.
Okay, let's see. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
If it gets really bad, I'll log off and log back in. But I'm almost finished, I promise. In Italy, have you all heard of the DOC and DOCG system? It's the denomination of guarantee of control, and every wine region, every wine, they're controlled, what grapes are allowed to grow in the region, when they're supposed to be picked, what the yields are on the grapes. Sometimes it's even telling you how to make wine, how much time in oak, how much time in aging, and so on. So these regulations, they have to get approved. Otherwise, they're table wines, IGT wines. And this region is 98% of the wines produced there are DOC wines, which is the highest level of DOC wines anywhere in Italy. So when it comes to red wines, they're growing Schiava, Pinot Noir, Lagrein, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon. But when it comes to whites, they have Pinot Grigio, Gewürztraminer, Pinot Blanc, Chardonnay, Müller-Thurgau, Kerner, Moscato Gialla, Riesling, Sylvaner, and Veltliner. Really high acid, really crisp, fun wines. And so today we have a Pinot Bianco, and what's fun about that is it's part of the Pinot family. So can you think of all the other grapes that start with Pinot? We have Pinot Noir, and Pinot Noir is a highly mutable grape. It can change its skin, it can lose its color on the vine and mutate into other wines. So Pinot Grigio, Pinot Meunier, Pinot Bianco are all mutations of the Pinot Noir grape. And so this wine is a Pinot Bianco that is known in Germany as Weissburgunder. If you ever drink German or Austrian wines, that's what it would be called. So I think I think you've heard enough of my garbled voice, and that's a good introduction to Pinot Bianco. So I will let Gina take it from here, and I'll turn off my mic for a few
I'll ask
minutes.
a quick question. Allison, is
Yeah.
Pinot Bianco the same as Pinot Blanc, like you'd find in Alsace?
Yeah, Pinot Blanc in France and Alsace, Pinot Bianco in Italy. It's also known, I wrote down all the names, it's known as Weissburgunder or Klevner in Austria, Fair Burgundy in Hungary, Pinot Bianco in Spain and Italy, Rulanski Biele in the Czech Republic, Rulanski Biele in Slovak, Bijeli Pinot in Croatia, and then something I can't read in Serbia because it's not in our alphabet. So, but those are all the different grapes of names of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, this is great. It's so funny when we ordered the wines and I knew exactly what we were ordering, but then when I got the bottles in, we ordered the Italian, the Portuguese wines, and then also the Austrian wines at the same time. And I read Weissburgunder and I'm like, oh no, they sent us an extra Austrian wine. I was so confused. If anyone else got confused like I did, I laughed at myself. I see you, Marcy. Even I was like, I literally had to triple check because I was so scared that I was going to send you all the wrong wine. But
to that point, Gina, we were talking before most of you came. Alto Adige, which I had said, also has the name of Südtirol. If you ever travel or pass the Veneto into the area, you will think you have left Italy. The architecture looks like an Austrian village. The people look of Germanic descent. Their names are not Italian. So street signs, restaurant signs are in 2 languages. So it is a completely different world when you're up there, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And it's super reminiscent of, Mike will get into the actual tasting notes and stuff after I tell you a little bit more about the winery, but it's very, very, very similar to a lot of the Austrian wines. So for those of you who are participating in the Austrian class, just remember this wine and remember the flavors that you're experiencing, because I think it's going to be a really cool and very valuable callback to when we get up north just a little bit to the Austrian regions. But with that being said, so this, I don't have the bottle next to me, but it is the Strobelhof, and I apologize for my poor, thank you, Allison, my poor pronunciation. I am not of Germanic or Austrian descent. But so the winery and vineyard is Strobelhof, and it was founded in 1890. Right now, or actually over the period of history, most of the wineries coming out of this region, like Allison said, are very similar and mimic that of Germanic and Austrian styles. So high acid, high minerality, of course, that's because part of the soil content that they're experiencing up there. But most of the wineries that exist up in that area are co-ops, so large wineries with multiple winemakers working out of them. But what makes this wine special is that it's actually a single family owned and run winery that was founded in 1890. That just kind of blows my mind. The red that we'll taste next is even older. So these grapevines were replanted and grafted in the early 90s, but there has been grapes growing in this region since like the 16th century, which my American mind just can't even fathom. So I'm fascinated. There's just so much history behind these lands. So I think Allison mentioned Pinot Bianco is the most widespread grape variety in the region of Alto Adige. So this is, if you ever think of that region, this is the grape that you should be thinking of. And then getting into the family, Joseph Hanny inherited Strobelhof from his father, who was the founder. But then unfortunately fell ill and died in 1991. But then in 1993, or I'm sorry, he passed away in 93 after he got very ill at age 59, which is pretty young. And then he passed on the vineyard and winery to his daughter, Rosemary, when she was just 22. She had obviously grown up in the winery, so she knew what she was doing. She had done many, many years of harvest with her father, but at 22, she took over the production. And then her sister Christine also took over the estate management as well. And then ever since then, they have been managing this with their enologist as well, who is not named here. But so that's just a really cool, I mean, we get so excited about female winemakers here in the US, but there's female winemakers all over the world, and it's like not a big deal there. So I'm really happy that America's kind of catching up with the times, because women make amazing wine just as men do. So I think that is all I wanted to say about this wine. Mike, can you tell me please about your wine tasting notes and maybe a little bit more about how the wine is made?
Tasting's so subjective, but Allison and I were discussing this wine before everyone else showed up, and the first thing that I got when I first poured it was kind of a kaffir lime leaf tree. So like if you're, walking around, you smell those amazing lime trees. They have that sort of dusty, polleny, green lime smell to the leaves, and they use it in Thai food. And it also has, I think, really a nice floral aromatics, kind of yellow flowers like sunflowers and daisies, if you want to be that specific about it. And I think Allison saying in chat that she's picking up what I am too, which is kind of a beautiful sort of mint herb sort of thing, maybe dill, sweeter herbs. I almost want to say like scallions, like onions, like sort of like red onions, Maui red onions or something like that. That sweet part of what an onion smells like. So it's really inviting. There's also obviously some fruit, I think, maybe some lychee is starting to come through, along with kind of green apple, pear, maybe unripe nectarine, things like that. I think it's really complex on the nose. And as you jump into it, I think it's, when I first tasted it, I was sort of shocked, taken aback by the sort of intensity of this wine. It's not a heavy bodied wine. It's definitely light and sort of lithe, but it has a really persistent finish. And that sort of minerality is really kicking in, which is sort of that almost hard to describe. People compare it to like licking a rock or something, just sort of that like odd, salty mineral quality that's hard to put your finger on. Some have argued that minerality is not really a thing or a word, but that there's other ways to describe it. But this wine makes me think of that. And I'd love for Gina and Allison to jump in with any other comments or anyone else.
Well, I was going to add, this wine it's 94% Pinot Bianco. It's got 3% Chardonnay, which gives it a little more body, and 3% Pinot Grigio that gives it a little more aromatic. And it also spends 6 months in really, really large Slovenian oaks, like the huge, ginormous barrels, neutral. So that's not going to impart any flavor, but what it allows the wine to sort of do as it sits in there is interact with the yeast and kind of round out, and you feel that more on the palate. It's more about mouthfeel than it is about aromas. And I think that's what's so pretty about this wine, is that it's got all that kind of fresh acidity, but it really just kind of sits on your palate, like in the front and middle, and just it hangs there. And I'm actually heavy. Yeah, and I'm actually thinking of David said he made a shrimp pasta, and I think that would taste so good with this wine. Is it working, David?
We will let you know, and please come over.
Because, with the acidity, what would be nice is to have something with just a little bit of fat, not a lot, not something overpowering, but something that has a little more fat to it, that this wine can kind of balance, but also kind of dance over, if that makes sense. If I make my
We're eating spicy pumpkin samosas from Trader Joe's, and it pairs very nicely. So yes, they're like fried-ish. So you've got the fat and the spice goes well. I think the fact the body helps because I have a hard time pairing food with acidic wines if they're too acidic, but the body kind of tones this down and makes it better for food, right? Is that coming from the body?
Absolutely. I think that, you know, acidity is great for pairing with food, but the level of acidity is also what you're going to pair it with. I mean, if you were going to have ceviche or oysters or something really fresh like that, yeah, you want high acidity and you're not going to have the same effect. But I mentioned to a few people at the beginning, I was on a Wines of Germany tasting today, pairing with food, and we had a dry Riesling. And I had so much spice in my chicken tinga that the Riesling did not work for me because I wanted more body and a little more sweetness to cut the spice. This might even work better. It's not about sweetness, but it's about the fact that it has that kind of richness on the palate without being, I hate saying rich because there are wines that are far richer than this, but it has intensity.
Right. I think the intensity is going to pair well with a lot of food because it's going to either counterpoint to it by really like, you know, not fighting back, but holding its own against it, or it's going to sort of accentuate, you know, it's almost like salt in a way. It's going to accentuate what you have with it. So for me, I think what should not be lost on everyone is the date on this wine. It's 2015. So we can start to, if we have any, get rid of our preconceived notions about certain white wines not aging well, because I think this is perhaps, you know, I would guess that this is maybe a little more mineral driven and a little more, I don't know, the acid is really present and it started to integrate really well, I would assume, more than it possibly was on release. So, I mean, I think it's a fascinating wine.
And that's what's really fun with all the, you know, I'm a big fan of white wines. I think there's so much diversity in white wine and so many Italian white wines. And when it comes to pairing with food, I mean, yes, do what you want, try different things. It's kind of like when you cook and you decide to add, you know, the spices you choose to add to a dish that you would add to something else. Like when you choose to use cinnamon, but you choose to use cumin or, you know, things like that. And pairing wine with food is sort of in that same vein. Like lots of different things will work, but if you just want a white wine to pair with fried chicken or, you know, shrimp scampi or samosas, you know, it's this kind of like good, like medium plus good acidity, nice body, not too acidic, not too textured and round. It's just one of those like kind of fresh, enjoyable wines that you can enjoy on its own, but it could work with so many different things because it's not gonna, it's already just right there for you. It's not going to overplay or get lost like other wines might do.
Does anyone else have any interesting wine food pairings that they're experiencing right now? Aaron and I ordered Indian food. I don't know if that's going to pair at all, but that's what's going to happen later.
We shall see. We'll find out.
That sounds really good, actually.
I know.
Seems like it would go, to me, it seems like it would go well.
With this white, for sure. I mean, that acid is just, it's so beautiful. And I think it'll be complementary to at least one or two of the dishes that we ordered. But yeah.
I mean, if you have a super spicy dish, I would say you want more sugar, more residual sugar in the wine. You want to go with a, you know, like a Riesling, or maybe even go super perceived sweetness of Gewürztraminer. But this has those pretty sweet notes, the floral and everything. And I think I could see it with some sag paneer, or, you know.
That's what I was saying. I was going to say matar paneer. I agree. I mean, I think it needs to go with like Indian veggies, or maybe tandoori chicken. It could work well with.
Yeah, something a little bit fattier.
Yeah, it might get blown out. A real spicy curry might be too much for it to go up against, but who knows? It's a pretty sturdy, balanced wine, so it might surprise you.
Yeah. And I mean, back to what you were saying, Mike, about the date, like, I mean, the American speed of releasing wines, like right now it's, oh my God, it's 2020. And like most people would scoff at seeing a 2018 white even in a restaurant or more of like a market type place. And so it's really cool to be able to experience an older vintage white that's still so fresh and so beautiful.
What do you guys think? Does everyone like this wine? A lot of
That's beautiful.
We were remarking this is a great wine to like have like if you were to have a party like pre-COVID.
I will to pour during like cocktail hour. So we were saying because it's like it tastes nice on its own. So it's not like a wine that needs food, but then it doesn't like turn off the food. Like because sometimes there's some wines that really need food, and then there's some wines that like are delicious, and then you have food and you're like, oh no. So I would say this is kind of good for snacking.
Yeah, it wakes up your palate and it makes you want to have food. So it's a perfect wine to kind of start with and then lead right in with. I'm impressed. I mean, this is my first time trying the wine too, so.
For when we can someday have cocktail parties again.
We can all do this in person.
Someday, hopefully someday soon.
Well, one of the things that I'm definitely going to do differently with this series, we usually sell out of the wines, but I think because I love this wine so much, I'm probably going to do another order, and I'm going to send the recording of this video to everyone. So in case you thought of a note or a food pairing that we were talking about, you're welcome to review it. And when you get that email, I will also include a link to purchase more. So, and it will be less expensive than participating in the class. So I'll throw up some nice, cool specials on these wines that we're tasting tonight as well, if you wanted to reorder in the future.
And David, how was it with the salmon pasta? Deborah, David?
It's not the salmon pasta. It's actually a one dish lemon pasta with shrimp,
okay,
kale, and cannelloni beans with, and it's just
linguine.
Delicious. No, it's linguine. It's delicious.
It's really good.
I will send you the one pot recipe.
Okay, and it works with the wine?
It works very well with the wine. Yes.
Yay.
We also got some cheeses that Gina had recommended. We got a triple creme soft cheese for the first, and we've got some very sturdy Gouda for the red wine. So
nice.
We're ready.
Well
Awesome.
prepared.
Well, if everyone wants to go ahead and move on to the red, if you had it in the fridge, please go grab it. Erin, will you actually please come bring me the chilled red in the fridge?
Yes, mistress.
Thank you. I'm doing an interesting experiment. I have my room temp red, and then I'm interested to see how the flavors change, which I think that they'll be a little bit more muted and kind of have like a more vibrant flavor from the slightly chilled wine. So.
Yeah, and what's fun is, I mean, I had mine in the fridge overnight because I emptied a lot of boxes yesterday and just thought I'd get a head start. And I took it out about an hour ago. And so mine is warming up in the room. And it's pretty to go from that kind of chilled to more chilled is how they drink it in the summer for a refreshing summer drink. And when you think of, we'll move into Calabria now, we're going to travel way down south into down to Calabria in southern Italy, a very different place. This is a large peninsula. Calabria kind of juts between the Ionian Sea and the Tyrrhenian Sea. And it is not far from Sicily, and it borders with Basilicata, and then the Apennine peaks are in the south. So you've got the mountainous region, and it's always important to know where mountains are in wine regions because they affect the weather patterns and the climate. So you're here in a Mediterranean climate, clearly a Mediterranean climate, but the continental climate, is kind of being protected by those mountains. So grapes originally came into Calabria from the Greeks in the many centuries ago, and unfortunately in the 19th century, the region went by, which is the terrible little bug that has killed many a vine around the world. And so Calabria got sort of a late start coming back into the wine world of recognition on an international level. It's a really rural region, and their economy really depends on grains, cereals, citrus, olives, and then of course wine, but wine is not their primary way to make money like other regions might say. And the other thing is that because it's so mountainous, it's very fragmented, which makes it really hard for owners to have large lots of land. And so to what Gina was saying before, you have a lot of co-ops. And as Americans, we probably look at co-ops as sort of, you know, maybe I'm just implying my own perceived idea, but a co-op would sort of be a way where people could sell their grapes and you'd make mass produce lots of different wine, kind of like the bulk market here. But a co-op opportunity, almost every region in Italy has one. The co-op is offering an opportunity for someone who owns 1 hectare, 2 hectares, and don't ask me to translate that to acres, but it's small. You know, and the cost to have all the facilities to make wine. And so they can instead work in the co-op, and co-ops, you know, are making wine. And like I said, the regulations of DOC wines, which now with the EU is called DOP, because they use that throughout Europe. Because in Italy, it was DOC, and France was AOC, and Spain was DO, and the EU tried to unify it by making them all DOP. So, so the interesting thing is this is an area that's home to only 12 DOCs, and it still does not have a DOCG. And they only make up a small amount, but one of the oldest wine regions is Chiro, which is where this wine is from. And they produce an ancient variety, Galliopo, is the wine. Galliopo, through DNA tests, is suggested to be a child of, a descendant of Sangiovese, and then an ancient grape that we don't even know. And so, you know, no one's really sure if it came from a Greek grape or if it really is Sangiovese, but there are a couple theories out there. So, you know, Mike was saying when he smelled this, it had some Sangiovese-like aromas to him. So maybe there's a connection. So anyway, this is a grape that's grown at high altitudes to protect it from the hot climate that Calabria offers. It's a grape that can easily oxidize and lose its structure. So you really want, I mean, if you look at it, it's kind of hard. Look at your own wines. What's great about Italian wines is they're not what you think in California when you get these deep, dark Cabernets and Zinfandels and Petit Syrahs. I mean, these are, you know, brighter colors, and you'll even get some red wines that are so light in color you might think they're rosé. So just always never judge a wine by its actual color. Put your nose in it and taste it. So
this is totally delicious, in my opinion. I love it.
I would classify this as a chuggable wine.
Well, for me it is.
Isn't that good?
So
Or breakfast red wine.
Whoa.
I feel like you could drink this at noon. I would drink this at noon. It almost tastes carbonic to me, but it's not, right?
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what you mean because of that kind of the fruity characteristic you're getting. Yeah, but it doesn't have that candied note that you kind of get with
Less bubblegum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not totally dissimilar to Gamay in some ways. I think maybe some more like Cru Beaujolais stuff. It has kind of that
Exactly.
earthy quality to it. Yeah.
I was thinking Beaujolais all day.
Yeah,
Right.
and because it was aged in stainless steel, I think that really kind of applies to everything that we're saying. Is it adds to that freshness and kind of that brightness that you might not necessarily get from a red that's aged in a little bit more of a new or neutral French oak. But with that being said, it is finished in 2 months. I'm sorry. It has a slight passage, which I love how they say that about these wines, in barriques, which again are those larger format barrels that are also neutral. And that's a really interesting point. If no one has ever pointed this out to any of you, the smaller the barrel, the more oak or wood to wine ratio there is. So when you have a smaller vessel, you'll actually experience more of an oakiness and more of that like softer mouthfeel than you do when you see those huge oak barrels that you can like stand inside of. So anytime that people are using barriques, which is a specific size of barrel, they're really not going for like an oaky flavor. They just want to kind of like, again, like Allison and Mike were saying, soft or round out the wines. And that's good for both white and reds and rosé for that matter. It just depends on the style that the winemaker is looking for.
And one more thing, just in general about this grape, and then, you know, Gina, talk about the producer. Galliopo is it needs dry conditions. It has a tendency that it has high natural sugars. So you don't want to let it sit on the vine for too long. This does not have any residual sugar in it. This is not a sweet wine. It's a dry wine, but it is a grape that can have those tendencies. So, you know, I think this winery is doing it very well. What do you think, Gina? Tell us about the producer.
Yeah, so I'm like very much nerding out about this wine just in terms of how ancient these vines are. These vines have been producing wines since 1777. And I asked Aaron to help me out with some American history because he's my history nerd. And he said that 1777 is the year after the US declared independence from Great Britain. So that's how long these vines have just been making grapes. So if you can imagine how thick and knotty and gnarly these vines must be, I'm just amazed by that. And for it to still be producing something so light and delicious and delicate is really amazing. But
my nerdy husband chimed in. That means it was before our Constitution as well.
Yes. Actually, in this year, Virginia was the first state to sign the Articles of Confederation.
Amazing.
I mean, in fairness, the vines themselves have probably been replanted. Well, no, they would have had to be replanted. I'm sorry, Gina. They would have to, because if it had to put on American rootstock.
Okay.
That's the
I thought that was such a
it's anti. So, you know, I mean, I know in California we have 120-year-old vines, and I wouldn't doubt that these are longer than that. But unfortunately, I wonder about that because of phylloxera coming in and wiping out the area.
That's a good point, and I will definitely re-research that. But I found the 1777 on a number of different websites. But I mean, yeah, so I'll dig a little bit deeper, but if the 1777 date is true, that's pretty amazing, but if not, totally understandable.
And just so you know, if you ever find someone who tells you they didn't have phylloxera, you can always tell them that's because they have sandy soils. Phylloxera and sandy soils don't work together. So if you ever want to sound more knowledgeable or quicker to the punchline, if someone tells you in Priorat, Spain or somewhere else that they've never had phylloxera, just go and they'll be very impressed.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I do know that there's just a handful of places in the world that were untouched by phylloxera. So I wonder, and some of them on more like island type, like off the coast of Spain type places. So that probably falls in the category of having sandy soils. That makes sense. Hello. But so I'm just going to read this passage from their website because I can't say it any better than they can because of the historic nature of the area of Cerro. So on the land called San Francesco in the Cerro area of Calabria, a monastery was established in 1578, surrounded by vineyards and olive groves. This monastery was taken away from the church in 1770 by an ordinance of Emperor Ferdinand IV. Upon such ordinance, all feuds previously belonged to the monks were put to auction, and on July 4th, 1777, they were assigned to the noble Capara Cicilline family, Cicilline, from the village of Cerro. Since those remote times, the vines and olive trees planted by the monks have kept producing fine wines, maybe, and exquisite olive oils and are still managed today by the same Capara Siciliani family. Today, Trattoria San Francesco produces a comprehensive range of traditional Calabrian whites, rosé, and red wines from the native Galliopo and Greco grapes in the heart of Calabria's flag appellation Cerro DOC, which Allison already told us about. And then the old monastery, which is now known as Casal San Francesco, is currently the center of agricultural activity. And then just to finish, Galliopo, which is what we're drinking, is the most important indigenous grapevine in this region. So again, just like the white that we were drinking from Alto Adige, this is the main grape coming from the region, the Cerro DOC in Calabria. So such history. I'm just really excited. And it's delicious.
I was going to show you, let's see if I can get this to focus. But if you look at this map, Calabria is basically the toe of the boot.
They have a map already.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they should have a map. But yeah, that's a good spot to point out.
So it's the one kicking Sicily, and but it is really beautiful. I spent 2 days there last year in Calabria.
Do you want to go back?
Yes.
Mike, what are you tasting?
It's amazing. It smells, it's almost starting to get a little bit of what you will find in aged red from the old world, like almost kind of that pencil-letty sort of graphite Bordeaux thing that you'll get. But there's other stuff too. I think notably like a Moroccan spice sort of thing, like cumin or cinnamon or cloves or something. And on the, it's not as intense on the fruit side of it. I mean, I want to say it's kind of those like darker sort of plum or berry things, but I feel like those are almost in the background compared to some of the more earthy, savory elements. And I think the thing that when we first popped it an hour ago was reminding me of Sangiovese was kind of that herbal underbrush sort of thing. Actually kind of reminds me of like Central Coast area too, in terms of just that sort of region, not necessarily the wine, but just the region, just all that underbrush and weeds and dried sort of herbs and stuff like that. So maybe rosemary, things like that, thyme. On the palate, it's dense and dark, but it's not overpowering, right? I mean, I'd love for you guys to jump in and tell me what you think, what you agree with, and what you find to be like, I'm not getting that at all.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah.
To
me, it's very tasty, clearly, but what is it that makes it so tasty? Because we could clearly all drink our bottles up very quickly.
There's sort of this balance between an intensity and sort of a delicateness, that this wine is not overpowering at all, but it's got body and I mean, it's not a light wine, but there's such a lightness to it.
Right. It's so easy to drink, but it has complexity to it as well. So it's kind of a treat, you know, in that respect. Because normally, you know, you find a wine that smells like this, and then it's going to be kind of heavy and grippy on the palate. To me, the tannins are almost fully resolved at this point. Just 2 years, 3 years after bottling. So, I mean, I think this is ready to go. I'm not sure what the upside would be of aging this any longer, but it's probably in kind of a cool place right at this point.
I wonder, going off of that, what you guys think about the ageability of this wine, because it feels so balanced and perfect right now. And it is still relatively young. It's a 2017. Do you think that you could lay this down for another 5 to 10 years, or you think you should just drink it now?
I would say what I'm getting is do it now. I'm sure that it could do fine for another year or two if cellared well, but I don't see what the point of that would be. And I would see it ultimately start to fade probably after 2, 3, 4 years. But that's my guess. I'm curious what Allison thinks about that.
I agree with you. I think it's 3 years old now and it's drinking beautifully. I would give it another year or two max. I'm not saying hold it. I'm saying if you don't drink it now and it happened to be on your shelf for another year, you'd be fine. But I think it's such a pretty wine. I like the tannin because, you know, the tannins are that drying sensation you get on your palate. And when you over soak a tea bag or green banana or something like that, but they're kind of like this really soft sandpaper that just, it lingers and it kind of makes you move your tongue around and want a little bit more, but it doesn't dry the mouth or anything like that. I mean,
at this point, it's more the memory of a tannin that was previously strong, and now it's almost fully resolved. So I think that yeah, that points to the ageability too, because if the tannins are starting to resolve, that means it's time to drink up. So
To me, it tastes almost like, Kim doesn't agree, but like when I first smelled it, almost like vanilla. And then, I don't know, I mean, I just know if I like it or don't, but you say what you're gonna say.
I don't know. I never liked thin wines. I mean, I started out saying Zinke's my favorite winery right now because they're so big and huge and
This
thick.
is very different than Zinke.
Like, although this is so thin, the taste to me is more of like a heavy wine taste.
well, I think, the key with wine is always finding a few words to describe what you like that you can then communicate to a sommelier or a salesperson to say, this is what I typically drink. And thin is a tough word because this is a sort of a medium minus wine in terms of body, but it's not a light wine. And I totally get what you mean by thinner wines versus bigger wines, but I'm trying to think of like what I think of like a thin red wine.
Well, when she says thin, I think I know what she means. I think she means lean. This wine is very lean compared to the sort of fatty, unctuous, outrageous like Zinke style, where it's just like boom, fruit and oak and fruit and oak, and it's amazing. Don't get me wrong, I like it very much. But this is lean and thin compared to that. So this is more, I think, is that what you mean, Kim?
No, I mean, like, I don't usually like to see through my wines. Like, I can see through this red.
But I guess, so to my point,
this red, and I don't, like, usually someone would pour this and I'd be like, oh God.
But this was to my point earlier, is that if you talk about a thin wine in color, I get totally what you're saying. It's a lighter red. It's a leaner style, but that's why I said never judge your red by its color.
It's very.
I think she's saying she actually kind of likes it, right?
I love this, which is weird.
Oh, that's awesome.
But if you look, a lot of most Italian red wines are transparent. And when we say that, if you take a piece of paper and you hold it up, if you can read words through the wine, we call that, transparent or clear or, medium intensity of transparent, whatever. When it's opaque, when it's dark, you can't see the words at all. When you get a Petite Syrah and you put that down, there's nothing getting through. But I just did a tasting of a lot of Petite Syrahs, and they're not all big, unctuous, over-the-top wines, even though the color is dark. Remember, color comes from skins of the grapes, and a lot of Italian grapes are thinner skinned grapes or lighter colored. So no matter how much time they spend on the grapes, how much time the juice spends on the grapes, they can't get the intensity of color that a Zinfandel or a Cabernet can get. So it doesn't mean that the texture and taste and flavor and aromas won't be there. The color is just not achievable. Pinot Noir of Syrah or Zinfandel, but you've had some bigger bodied Pinots and you've had some lighter bodied Pinots. So it's really hard to necessarily assume by color. If you think about rosés, the same thing. I mean, you can have a very light, delicate rosé that's a bright pink. They don't all have to be ballet slipper color Provence to be delicate. So color can be deceiving. It can tell you a lot about a wine, but it also, I mean, you can tell by a very golden yellow wine that it's probably aged. But at the same time, you have to taste it to really understand if it's oak influence, if it's the grape, if it's the age of the wine. I mean, that's where it gets a little weird. So I'm glad you like this wine.
So Allison, I'm curious, we get really intimidated by, so we know French wine pretty well and like the regions and what the grape would be. And we know Californian and American wines, but Italy just intimidates us because there's so many varieties, and it's like
That we don't hear of.
sometimes it's named after, isn't it? Like sometimes it's the name of the region, or sometimes it's like it. Or
Well,
maybe
that's no different than France. I mean, think about it. Burgundy, you have to know that's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
But I guess so I know what I'm getting in France and in Italy. So do you have any advice, like if you're at a wine shop? Because obviously, like Gina said, these were more affordable bottles. But I feel like sometimes when I try to buy Italian wines, like I end up with like the crap super mass produced. Because we're in North LA County, Santa Clarita. So we usually go to Whole Foods. Whole Foods actually the Whole Foods Italian wine actually is usually pretty good because they don't source crap at Whole Foods. But do you have any advice for like, I guess I have no idea like what I'm gonna like in Italy because it's
Or what to expect.
And
Like, I mean,
like
you know, like a Nebbiolo.
there's like no information on the bottle. Like,
Okay, wait, hold on. I have a book. Hold on. I'm gonna show you. Italy is an intimidating category. This is a book on the native grapes of Italy.
Just some light reading, Allison.
This is when you can't sleep, how you sleep at night.
that is intense.
This is the Bible on it. You know, I would say like Italian wine, oh God, it's such a daunting task because like I said at the beginning, 20 regions, they all have their own grapes. The good thing is that there are so many indigenous grapes to Italy. Sure, they'll find Chardonnay, Pinot, Cab, whatever. If you're in Lombardy where they make Franciacorta sparkling wine, they're growing Pinot and Chard and making Champagne. They're making Franciacorta, but it's made in the Champagne method with the same grapes. And you will find, you know, these international varieties. But what's fun about Italy is exploring all the indigenous varieties. And Whole Foods might not be the best place to start. What I would say is that if you tend to drink a little Pinot Noir, specifically from a place, like let's say you're more of a Sonoma Coast or Oregon Pinot drinker versus a Santa Rita Hills or Oregon, you kind of say it. And if you can go into a wine shop like a Whole Foods or a K&L or and talk to the Italian buyer or call them up on the phone and say, I tend to drink Pinot and I like this style, or I tend to drink Zinfandels or Cabernets or Syrahs. I want to explore Italian wine. Where do you think I should start? I personally have a theory that people who drink Pinot will like Nebbiolo and Barbera and Dolcetto, and people who like Cabernet and Merlot will like Sangiovese. That's my general theory. You can evolve and change, but then there are all these grapes in Piedmont. There's Fresia, and there's a grape I always forget that's like one of my favorites ever. That is so pale you would never know it had structure. And I'll blank on it. There's just so many fun grapes. So, God, where?
Let me jump in.
I'm like at a loss, like where you could start.
Allison.
The only ones I really know, which are Nebbiolo, like the ones you just said to drink are the ones we drink.
I have two shop recommendations for you guys that are going to be a little bit closer. And then Mike, you can finish up with this because I think you're on the same track as I am. But there's a wine podcast that I listen to called Wine Face. It's a really weird name, but it's owned by a woman it's ran by a woman named Helen, who owns Helen's Wines. I think there's 2 or 3 locations in LA, and she is just like Allison.
It's part of John and Vinny's Pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she's like an Italian wine goddess, just as Allison is, but she actually owns a shop. So that would be a really good place to start. And then also, oh my gosh, Aaron, what was the place called in Costa Mesa, farther away from you guys than John and Vinny?
High Times Wine Cellars.
Say it again.
High Times.
High Times.
Yes.
Yeah.
High Times is fantastic.
High Times is great, but in LA there's Winehouse, which Lance is the Italian buyer, and great wine selection. K&L has an amazing Italian section. With those targeted stores that have dedicated buyers, you can't go wrong with any of them. What I would even suggest is, you like this Galliopo, you know, maybe go to wine.com or seek out some Galliopos and try a couple of them. Get a sense. Look up another grape in Italy, you know, kind of following. I'm happy to email me and we can pick up some fun grapes you can find. And you know, it's really about tasting and trying the opportunity. If you go to an Italian restaurant one day, if you can ever eat in a restaurant again, you know, look for the weird wines on there, what we would call weird wines, like a grape you just are not familiar with. I mean, it's really fun because let's say you're a big Sauvignon Blanc fan. Vermentino from Italy is a great wine to have in lieu of a Sauvignon Blanc. There's so many great white wines you can have in place that will give you that high acidity, taken down maybe a notch. And the same with red. Like I said, if you like Pinot, I mean, I think if you like Pinot, to me, that says you like acidity and you like texture and balance. That's what a lot of wines will give you. And most of these wines go well with tomato sauce because the cuisine of many places in Italy, and that's a good thing too.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but Jen and Kim said in the chat, I just wanted to point out, she said another option if you're in the West LA area, stop by Sorrento Italian Market in Culver City and ask for their wine guy. And that's a really good point. Mike, you had a couple of recommendations as well.
I think, well, for me, two things about Italian wine, just as a consumer. I've noticed that the big scores always tend to go to these like more expensive reds that are meant to be aged 20 and 30 and 45 years. And that's
Super
not that
Tuscans.
to me. They're interesting if you can pick them up secondhand and they've been aged already, and that happens. So that's a cool thing. But I mean, all said, I'm more interested in stuff I could actually drink now. And I think that and without upsetting Allison, natural wine stuff, which really actually means low intervention wine making, is, I think, kind of the key word that I look for when I'm looking for interesting Italian stuff. And I could actually put together a list, if you're interested, of stuff I've had in the past year or two from my cellar tracker that would maybe give you some places to start if you're interested in that sort of winemaking, which I think is not totally dissimilar to like this.
Let's clarify. We are not using the term natural wine. Low intervention is fantastic.
Yes, that's why I corrected it. Low intervention winemaking.
Yes, we love that. So,
yeah, Mike, actually, if you don't mind, and Allison,
a ton of those, yes.
we'll compile between the three of us. We'll compile a list of recommendations and shops and stuff and places that you can find great Italian wines, so you can rethink the Italian wines. And we'll all send that out to everyone who joined tonight as well, as part of the recording of this and the option to repurchase these wines that we drank tonight. So that'll be part of our class homework. We'll get it out to you and you guys can kind of continue your Italian wine journey. And
maybe Gina, maybe what we could do is, if there's interest with you guys and others, is we'll go find some more fun Italian wines and do it. You know, originally when we talked about doing Weird European, like, I mean, Italy is a subject unto its own. We could do Italian all day and we tried to break it up. But I mean, I think also a fun thing to do, and this is something you can do in your homes, is go out and buy 2 or 3 different producers. I mean, remember, every time you taste wine, because you love it or hate it, doesn't mean you're gonna love others that you have. Never judge a wine by the single wine you drink. So, you know, go out and get a couple Galliopos and you might say, wow, this is a fun grape. Whenever I see it, I'm going to get it. Go out and buy a couple, you know, Schiavas or a couple, you know, find some grapes, but do comparisons. And maybe that's something we could do down the line, where we kind of find 2 or 3 producers just to get a sense of diversity, you know, the range, the spectrum that they sit on.
absolutely. I mean, I think that this kind of like deep dive into different regions throughout the world, like I said, it's not my specialty, but it's such an amazing opportunity to create context for the California or American New World wines that I myself, I'm speaking for myself, am more used to drinking. And it's such a cool opportunity to experience world history, different flavors. different winemaking techniques that might not be used as much here in the New World. But yeah, there's a huge opportunity for us to all continue diving deeper into different wines from all over the world. And this is the 3-part series that we're all participating in. But we will come up with another cool 3 or more part series after with a different theme as well. So maybe some cool Italian wines will pop up in the next one. And I don't want to keep everyone, but we're happy to hang out if there's more Q&A. If you need to go, please feel free. We hope to see you in the Portugal and Austrian classes that we're leading as well. But again, this is Q&A time, so we're here to answer all your questions. Please feel free. Allison put her email in the chat. It's allison@pleasethepalate.com. Mike, if you want to throw yours in there as well, and I'll do the same for Riviera Wine Group. And then, yeah, so please feel free to ask questions. We're here until you don't want to be.
And Melanie, I wanted to let you know that I have a couple importer friends who have retail license, because one of the challenges is that imported wines can't sell directly to consumer, but I know a few very, very small boutique importers of Italian wine that I can lead you to, just to see what kind of fun things they have to try if you want to just buy a few wines and drink
Yeah,
them.
that would be awesome. We never open multiple wines in a single night. Gina can tell you. We do that a lot.
Yeah. Any questions? David, how did that aged Gouda situation go? Is that a good pairing?
Loved it. Yeah, good suggestion. And please, in the future, you know, for Portugal and Austria, do the same thing. Please recommend some cheeses.
Absolutely.
Harder to find Portuguese cheese.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
But
and by the way, the recommendation that I had read was that for Galliopo, they recommend spaghetti with garlic, oil, and chili, very typical Southern dish, roasted guinea fowl with garlic polenta, and roasted Mediterranean vegetables with halloumi cheese. So, you know, that's what they recommend with this grape.
I've never had the grape before. I thought it was quite interesting. And I can't pronounce it, but I liked it.
I included the phonetic spelling on the tech sheet. So it's Galliopo. But I do that, and I will do that on all future classes as well, because I also would not know how to pronounce this without that.
Great. Al, have you opened all the bottles behind you? I mean, what's the story there?
Yeah.
First of all, I have this nifty toy called a Coravin.
Yes.
Which keeps me from opening all the bottles. It saves. But no, I mean, you're not even seeing the half of it, because in front of me, my table is full of wine too. It's the trials and tribulations of writing about wine.
Can I call you out, Allison, on your improper wine storing techniques? Shouldn't you be storing this on their side?
Okay, in fairness, I have one wine refrigerator below me. I have a big wine refrigerator there, and I have another wine refrigerator there. But let me just turn around and show you.
Oh my God.
Allison!
Yeah, that is amazing.
Oh, wow.
It's really painful, I have to tell you, because I live alone and I would like to share my wine with someone. So,
You don't live alone.
Kathy, you live near me, right? You're in West.
Yes, I do.
Just tell me. I'm happy to put. I mean, my parents take a lot of the wine, but tell me, I've got a whole. There's even more that you didn't see over there, but I've got more that I'm willing. Like once I Coravin them, I mean, I'd love to keep so many of these wines, but I just can't. But I'm going to package it together for you LA people. Just call me, David.
And Allison, I really enjoyed this Italian one. I hope you do some more Italian, because I'm sort of partial to Italian and French. So it'd be great if you did some more of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We should do in the future, a future series, we could do like you know how you mentioned that Pinot Bianco exists in different countries. We can do Pinot Bianco in Italian and Pinot Bianco in another country. So we could do a country comparison with the same variety. That could be fun.
That would be fun. It's, you know, it's always, what I think what's great about wine is you can never make like ultimate statements. It's a never, and you can never say never. You can never say never, but you can't say always or never in the wine industry, because I can promise you that if you tell me you don't like a grape, I will find one somewhere in the world that you will like. So if you say you don't like Chardonnay, I'm on that challenge. I will tell you tons that you will like, that you would never know were Chardonnay by the old definition. The same thing with, you know, all these grapes. So
are you writing all these down?
I think it's always important that as you try wines, you know, if you don't like something, fair enough, describe that. But always remember sort of that could be the producer, it could be the place, it could be that bottle of wine. You know, I can say I don't prefer oaky Chardonnays. I don't prefer New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc in the traditional style of grassy. I'll drink it, but I don't prefer it. But, you know, we can show you in comparison so you can really understand that a grape will taste differently from where it's from and the producer.
Well, thanks you guys. That was awesome.
Thank you guys so much for joining.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
We'll see most of you in class on November 6th, Friday at the same time, starting at 6. And yeah, if you have any other questions, please stick around. But again, you're welcome to pop off, and we'll see you in Portugal.
Is it still open for people to get in on it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're still taking orders for the Portugal tasting through mid next week at the latest. But then Austria will be open for at least another week or so as well. So yeah, if you have any friends that you think you might enjoy this, you're welcome to. We're still doing the special, so it's a slightly discounted if you buy the next 2 classes together, or you can buy each individual class for $49.
Because the wines are good,
So fun fact, Kathy and I used to work together.
Yes, and we just connected right now.
No way!
I'm chatting.
So it was good to see you.
It was great to see you too. There's something good about COVID, you know?
That's so funny. Kathy and I work out together. David, I run into at wine events when we used to do wine events.
And I really missed the champagne thing that you did last year at the
Champagne Festival. Well, clearly it wasn't happening this year, but some of the partners in it didn't have their acts together quite the way, you know, necessary. So I don't know if there's a future, but
oh, great.
But no, I mean, there's so many great wines in this world, and Gina, what's great about her wine club, you know, from my limited introduction, because we only met a couple months ago, but she's really focused on small producers and local producers and really introducing sort of these kind of the wines that Mike and I might know, but you might not know, you know, if you travel to Santa Barbara or in the Central Coast. But at the same time, I've been able to introduce Gina to some other small brands further up in Sonoma or now internationally. And it's really fun to just not buy name brands. I mean, no offense to, I appreciate the hard work that big brands do, but these are the people we need to keep in business. The 2 wines we have today are from an importer called Winemonger. They started importing exclusively Austrian wine. They've obviously branched out to Italy. They have an amazing portfolio. They don't sell direct to consumer, but it's portfolios like that, you know, it's great to be able to support and taste their wines, because they put so much pride into what they select, and I think you can taste that. So.
Thanks for the shout out, Allison.
You send out monthly?
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on that. So our wine club is pretty flexible in the sense that you get to choose how frequently you'd like to receive wines. We currently, and this will be changing pretty quickly, I'm very excited, we currently have 2 wine clubs. It's just a 2-bottle or a 3-bottle, and we do a white and a red, unless you specifically reach out to me and say, hey, I'd prefer all whites or all reds. And then you get to choose how frequently you receive the wine. So we get a lot of people who want wine monthly, but we of course have a lot of people who want wine every other month or every quarter. But we have it set so you can literally receive wine like every 5 months or a weird cadence like that. And like Allison said, I do focus specifically on really small production, family owned. I do also lean towards the low intervention wines as well, although that's not like a hard and fast rule for me. But I studied environmental studies in college, and I've always been extremely eco-friendly and, you know, sustainable. So I feel like that's a cool kind of theme that rolls right through my wine club. But it's not a rule, because I feel like sometimes even if a winery isn't certified organic, and this is a whole tangent that we could go off on, so I'll very briefly touch on it. There's a lot of wineries who are acting extremely sustainably, but can't legally say it that they're certified organic or whatever. So I do my research, and I really like to support the people who are small, who you would never find in a grocery store. The smallest production wine that I've ever featured was literally just 1 barrel. And then I think I don't know the largest production, but always very small. And I think that it's really fun to experience more unique varieties, different winemakers. Yeah, so it's a cool club. It'll open up your eyes, and you're welcome to join. And then I'll do a little teaser. One of my goals for this year is to actually launch a lower priced wine club, which will be ideally coming out around Black Friday. I don't have any other details on that other than that's a goal. But yeah, something a little bit more affordable, and we'll also be offering on like a bi-monthly cadence. So you could, if you're more local, you can even order wine. The goal anyways is to have wine that's offered to be delivered to you twice a month instead of just once a month, in case you want that. So lots of exciting stuff coming out.
And now she's meeting the importers, so you never know if you get some international finds in there.
And there will be, yeah, that's something that I've been a little intimidated by, but Allison and Mike have been opening my eyes. So there will be more imports. It'll be more of like a global wine club as opposed to just California based. Well, unless anyone has any other questions, we'll let you go. I feel like a couple more people are dropping off, but please enjoy the rest of your wines. I will be getting out this recording and our recommendations for wine shops and other wines to try probably mid next week. But yeah, and please feel free to respond if you have any very exciting wine pairings or anything else you're looking forward to. Please, we'd love to hear from you. And like I said, in the tech sheet that I sent out, there is contact information, as well as in the chat how to get a hold of Mike, myself, and Allison if you have any specific questions for any of us. But we're so excited to see you on November 6th for Portugal. Some really fantastic wines coming your way as well. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Gina. Thanks, Allison.
Happy Halloween. Have a good Halloween and go vote.
Yes, let's vote.
I did.
Yeah, good girl.
Have a great Halloween. We'll see you with all your leftover candy.
Kim.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.